Welcome everyone, and thank you once more for joining us this evening. For those of you I have not met via Zoom, my name is Mark Faber. I'm the head wine buyer for United Cellars, and this is my little baby running these events. Assisting me, of course, is the ever amazing Luke Baldwin.
Evening.
Luke will be helping me in the background with all of the technical stuff, and then we've also got another one of my new members of the team here is Jane.
Hello.
Hey guys.
Jane will be helping us with the Facebook Live. We get a few questions through Facebook Live. We are all on Facebook Live right now, just so you know. So, and finally, but of course, last but not least, we have Pierre, who will be helping us understand a little bit more about the wines of the USA. We also have the assistance of Mr. Alistair Cooper, Master of Wine from Thames in the UK. And his Master Grills. And so all together we're going to be in, and we will be hopefully teaching you a little bit more about the wines of the USA. Of course, we're doing this tasting with the Independence Day, 4th of July on Saturday. We thought it might be a good opportunity to talk about the wines of the USA. So I'm going to just share my screen here with you guys. We're going to jump into our little presentation, but first and foremost, I'm just going to go to our next page here and over to Luke.
Yeah. Evening, everybody. So good to see some familiar faces. Getting a nice crowd every week now, which is great. This is probably a little bit boring for most people now because we cover it every week. But just in case anyone's new, a couple of bits to mention. We really encourage everybody to get involved. If you've got a question, you can either unmute and then just put it to one of the experts. If you don't feel too comfortable doing that, feel free to use the chat box in the corner. You can write a comment or a question in there, and I can get on the mic and ask one of the guys. So yeah, that's what we do. It's always really appreciated if anyone wants to jump in. Obviously, we have 4 wines to get through this evening, so we're going to try and keep things nice and short and sweet. Normally we do 3. So if we don't get on top of your questions, I'll always try and send you an email or get on top of it after the tasting. As Mark said, we are live streaming, so if you've got any friends or family that you think might be interested, please feel free to share the link. If we do have any comments coming off the live stream, Jane will let us know. So that's going to be good. Just moving on, as you can see on the screen here, we've got a chance to win your wine of the evening. So all you've got to do is text that number with your name, your email, and your favorite wine using the 3 or 2 letter code. We'll spin the famous wheel of wine at the end of the night, and you might be the lucky winner. So pretty exciting all round, and looking forward to it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Luke. So now we're going to run through, now I've advertised this as the wines of the USA. However, as you all have probably noticed, these are more the wines of California than they are the wines of USA. Now, that's not to say there aren't some fantastic wines to be found throughout the rest of the USA. Of course, I had the great pleasure of doing vintage in the Willamette Valley in 2018, in October 2018, and it is an absolutely fantastic place to grow grapes and to make wines, some beautiful wines. However, it's a little bit harder getting them over here, and they do tend to be quite expensive. So we thought we'd stick with the more tried and true and more well-known grape varieties and regions. And the vast majority of that comes, of course, from California. California is, of course, the biggest winemaking state of the US by a considerable margin. In fact, I believe the statistics still hold, and Ali, you'll have to be my fact checker here. I believe that the USA was either the 5th or the 6th largest wine producing country in the world. And if you took out all of the other states except California, it would still be the 5th or 6th largest producing wine country in the world. The rest of the states around, I think almost all of the 52, I think it's all of the 50 mainland states make wine. However, they're in such tiny, minuscule amounts. California is really, it is the engine room of the USA wine industry. So, but to tell us a little bit more about this, we're going to hand over to Pierre. And you'll see a little map here of California where we're going to be traveling kind of north and south through the state of California. So Pierre, if I'll hand over to you, mate.
Thank you very much. So yeah, no, so it's yeah, it will be a great tasting because we're gonna taste one from all across California, north part of California. But so yeah, my name is Pierre. I work for a company called Jackson Family Wine, which is it's a family-owned company which is making wine since 1982 with a winery called Kendall Jackson, or that you must have known. So that's when everything started by Jess Jackson. So I am based here in Hong Kong. So I'm a little bit earlier than you. So I'm just after work, so I can have a glass. I have no problem. I know you're just starting the aperitif, but for us, for me here, I'm cheating a little bit, but it's okay. Now, so I will have a few words about California, about the family, and then we're going to go deep into each wine and each winery through a really specific map logiciel, if I can say. So now just to have a few words about Jackson Family. So Jackson Family, it's a family winery which was created by Jess Jackson in 1978. Jess Jackson was a state attorney. He was working, living in San Francisco, and then he decided to retire when he was around 50 years old. Decided to buy a property, make some wine, and that's when Kendall Jackson started. So Kendall Jackson is now one of the biggest family-owned winery, but today we'll focus on La Crema on Stone Street, which was a middle name of Jess Jackson, and then for EDMEADES. So we're going to taste all vineyard by the coast of California. And being in Australia, I'm pretty sure you've heard about a winery called Yangara. That's United Cellar had a tasting a few days ago, a couple of weeks ago, which is also owned by Jackson Family from 2001. So as you say, Jackson Family is it's a family who own vineyards in California, in Oregon, in Saint-Emilion, in France, in Bordeaux, in Tuscany, in Australia, and in South Africa as well. So, but really the core of what we do, it's California, is the coast of California, and I will use a lot of the map that we are using. And
hello, you've come through to United Cellars. Sorry, I was on mute. I didn't realize.
Hello.
Apologies for that.
No problem. Yeah, and so yeah, we will taste. I will try to explain a little bit about the history of California, about the region, but as you say, some of you, we talked about it earlier, been to California, and the thing is that Napa Valley, it's a winery, it's a region, sorry, which is pretty important because it's famous. We all know the wines of Napa Valley and everything, but today we will taste wine which are outside of Napa Valley, one which are closer to the ocean. And so we're going to start with La Crema, Stone Street, and EDMEADES. And it's really something that, so if you have any question, I will be really happy to answer if I can, as much as I can. So California, first of all, they really, it is, as Mark said, the most important region in the US, one of the most in the world. And it's something that we really want to promote as a region, almost as a country, because as you say, California is the sixth biggest wine region in the world, but we compete with France, with Italy, with to a certain extent, but California is just a region. So it's about 150 different appellations. It's about almost 4,000 different wineries. So it is big, but everything started properly in the 1960s. So something to remember that California and the US, yes, they had a really difficult time, which was prohibition. So from the 20s to the 30s, 1920s to 1930s, the prohibition. So most of the vineyards were pulled out, or if the grape was grown, it was to to try to do some spirit, some alcohol, which was sold under layers. So yes, it's a new world. It's a new world area, new world region, because really when they start to make good wine is really from the 70s, 60s, 70s, and then so on. So it's pretty recent. And thanks to area like Napa Valley, like Sonoma County, Monterey, or Santa Barbara in the south, to really promote and to have this experience of promoting quality wine from Napa Valley, from California, sorry. So this is something which I really want to put a point on, that California, it's a new world area. And so we're gonna start with some La Crema. So La Crema, if you can all take the glass of Chardonnay. I don't know if you printed the tasting mat, but we're gonna go through each other. So La Crema, as you can see on the shared screen, so it is a winery which is located just here, and it's all surrounded by vineyards. But something that La Crema is doing is that it's trying to show the best potential of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir from Sonoma, so from an area which is on the coast of California. Because California, it's very, very different than in Europe, but it's not very different than Australia. So as you can see, the ocean is very near. So it's around 40 to 80 kilometers from the ocean, depends where you are. Or it can be very close, it can be like 5 kilometers. But we always say in Europe, I'm sorry, I'm French, so I speak about what I kind of know. But in the south, it's warm, in the north, it's cold. In California, it's the opposite. On the west, it's cold, so closer to the ocean, colder it gets. More inland you go, warmer it gets. It's a little bit like in South Australia. If you have McLaren Vale, Barossa, all this kind of region, closer you get to the sea, to the water, you can grow cooler areas. So Victoria, for instance, you can do some great Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and then you go more inland in South Australia, different region, but you have Barossa, and then it's big Shiraz, and it's much warmer type. It's pretty similar in California. And what we are trying to show in La Crema, so La Crema produce Pinot Noir and Chardonnay from the cooler area since 1979. So La Crema was one of the first winery to really try to express that, and it was purchased by Jackson family in the mid 80s. And then since then we developed many different vineyards, different area, if I can say. So Sonoma Coast, we have wine from Monterey, which is in the south of San Francisco. We have wine from Anderson Valley, which is in the north. We're going to taste Zinfandel later from there. But today we focus on two grape variety from the same area, Sonoma Coast. So here on a map, the Sonoma Coast, it's really an area that is becoming very complicated. So as you can see on the map here in the middle, you have an area called Russian River Valley. And this Russian River, I think it's something which is really important for the region. It creates, this is at the time, it's called the Russian River Valley because 150 years ago, the Russians, they went to California, and that's where they settled to find some, to grow some vegetables, some fruit, because they were going up to Antarctica to find some fur from the, forgot the name of the animals. So that's, sorry, my vocabulary is a bit poor sometimes. But so that's where the Russians settled, and they really, a big influence over there. And this Russian River Valley, it's where the first Pinot Noir and Chardonnay were planted. So it's really important to understand. As you can see, the river goes through, and it's not far from the ocean. And here on a map, I don't know if you can see, but all the blue part from the left and up to down Petaluma Gap, Petaluma town, yes. So this is what we are going to taste today. So Sonoma is not as famous as Napa, but is at least as historical as Napa. for the Californian Wine Institute, because in there, so you have a lot of Italian who move on. So of course the Russian, the Italian, a lot of French people came in, and this Sonoma coast, it has a big difference between Sonoma and Napa. As you can see on the right, on the east part of the map, we end up with a mountain range, and that will be very important for the Cabernet that we'll taste. So everything which is there, yes, thank you for showing. Everything which is there, it's really grown with Pinot, with Cabernet, with Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and then everything which is on the coast, on the west part, will be Pinot Noir, will be Chardonnay, because of the cooler influence of the ocean. So we have more than 30 different types of soil, which is almost more than France. So if you compare in France, some professional analysis, we have 45 different types of soil, and just in this region, there is more than 31. So that's really, really important, because California, it's a really seismic area. So there are earthquakes almost every day, not to say every week, small, big, but you have a lot of volcanic soil, you have a lot of clay, you have sandstone, you have some seashell. It's really important that to grow vineyard. And as you can see, it's 100,066 hectares of vineyard, which is really big, but they didn't have the same commercial power as Napa Valley. So that's why we are lucky to be able to taste some wine from Sonoma, which are representing an area, representing a great variety, but sometimes it's a bit more affordable than Napa Valley. And so we will start with the Chardonnay from La Crema. So as I mentioned earlier, La Crema is it's a winery which was created in 79. And so Jackson family, something to mention, it's family owned. So we own about 20,000 hectares of land, which is really, really big in California, in the world actually, in any kind of world. So we own that, and 6,000 hectares are planted with vineyard. So it's more than, well, it's just a little bit more than the vineyard of Switzerland, for example. So we have a really big amount of land, but it's all about the quality. And that's why we're lucky, because we have 45 different wineries as a Jackson family, and we share this 6,000 hectares within the winery. And each winemaker, each vineyard manager has got his own freedom to make the wine he wants. And I really like this picture, because as you can see, the vineyard on the back, they're in the middle of forest, and so it's not very flat land. Is that the luxury that Jess Jackson, which was the owner of Jackson family, he passed away in 2011, by the way, and it's his wife who took over, but he was a mountain man. Jess Jackson always believed in vineyard that struggle to make a good wine. So most of the vineyard are hand harvested. We harvest at night to keep a cool temperature, to keep the fruit cool, because California can be really complicated with the heat, with the sun. And what we are trying to do is really to express the region. So La Crema, it's a blend of several vineyards through the coast. So most of the vineyards, they come 30 kilometers from the ocean. So they still have the big influence of the ocean. So really to cool down the vineyard. And then, so our winemaker, they really try to keep the freshness of the wine. So I don't know if you are all tasting the wine at the moment, but it's a wine which is, you feel, there's a flavor profile on a slide, but you feel really some ripe character. You have this juicy, ripe, stone fruit component. But when you swallow the wine, I really think you have the freshness, the wine is digest. You don't have this sweet character. And I know earlier somebody spoke about Californian wine can be a little bit sweet, can be a bit rich, but I think La Crema is a perfect expression of the cooler vineyard of California and of the coast. Yeah.
If I could just jump in for a sec there, Pierre. So one thing that I love about these wines is, I mean, one thing that we're kind of taught in when we're tasting wines and getting to recognize wines from different regions is the fact that usually you can pick an American Chardonnay because of the oak.
Yes.
They do tend to be really quite oaky and rich and round and almost sweet oak, like a cinnamon, caramel, coconut oak, which tends to be the flavor profile of American oak. So, and Danny's mentioned here as well that it is quite light on the oak. I mean, there is still definitely, I mean, 8 months in French and American oak barrels is still quite a considerable amount, and that it needs it to match that fruit that you get from a relatively sunny area. However, I think it's very lightly done, and the addition of French oak into there as well is definitely outside of the norm for a lot of Californian producers. So, yeah. Ali, any thoughts on your side?
Yeah, first, I'm very lucky. The drills have stopped, so I'm going to be really quick so I can talk. But first of all, it's good to see Pierre, and just a bit of background. So Pierre and I actually used to work together in London. About 7-8 years ago, and a very proud Frenchman, and he was extremely this man Burgundy. So when he left Hedonism Wines that he was working at to go and work for Jackson Family Estates, it was quite a shock. And I spoke to him about a year later, and he was amazed. It was great to see his enthusiasm for California, being a proud Frenchman. So it's good to see you again, mate.
Yeah, good to see you too. Yeah.
Quick question on this wine. I totally agree with what the guys have said. Has this wine been through malolactic or not?
Yes, partially. So that's one of the things. The winemaker, because as you say, Mark, most of the time Californian wines, they have coconut, vanilla, cinnamon, and the wine are kind of covered with the oak aging because. I'm not a winemaker, again, so what I say is involve only me. But when it's kind of in California, it's easy to make wine which is ripe, rich, full of flavor. And to balance that, you just sometimes acidify the wine or add sugar if it's not ripe enough or things like that. But for La Crema, it's all about the vineyard. We try to really express. So we harvest at the right time. So when we think the harvest, the fruit is ripe enough, we can harvest it, ferment it, and the malolactic fermentation. So all the fermentation goes into a stainless steel tank. So we try not to put too much oak at first because it's still California, it's still a sunny area. And if you ferment it in barrel, it's going to give all this sweet flavor. And then, so we do the malolactic, we do the malo. We start it in tank, but we just cut it with a cold treatment. So yes, because otherwise we're going to lose too much acidity. And what we want is to have this zesty, lemony, citrus character. So you have
vibrancy,
Yes. So you have the tropical fruit component, but the acidity in the wine that. When you drink the wine, is rich, is big. You have a bit of coconut, vanilla, but not too much. Bit of toast. But when you swallow, for me, what makes a great wine is when you have a sip, you want another one. And this is, I think, really important to show the cooler climate and not to overripe the fruit, and to have a great winemaker and great vineyard manager also to be able to handle the ripeness of the fruit.
I'm just going to jump in there. We've got Jane's been messaging me. We've got a question coming off the Facebook Live feed. Jane, I'm just going to throw over to you if that's okay.
Thanks, Luke. Pierre, I just had a question come through in regards to comparison of this type of Chardonnay in Sonoma being a bit cooler than the Napa Valley, and the comparison to an area like Chablis in France. They just asked what bit of comparison between those, aside from obviously the oak factor.
Yeah. So I think the most important factor to take in consideration is the climate, the temperature. So Chablis is in. So if you look at the latitude of the world, Chablis it's on a different line than Sonoma, California. So Chablis is in the north, higher elevation. So Chablis will be a little bit more like Oregon. So California is a bit more south. Chablis, it's all about the temperature, the weather. The soil is very different, of course. But I think the most important difference is the weather. So the temperature in average will be Alistair, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but across the year in California will be 2-3 degrees Celsius more than in Bordeaux, so than in Chablis, so in Burgundy, not Bordeaux. If you compare across the growing season, which is around 120, 130 days, if you add 1 or 2 degrees every day, the problem of California is to manage the weather, the heat, to keep the heat down. And in Chablis, is the opposite. They need some sun. And then we can get into the canopy management, to how irrigation and all this kind of conversation. But I think the most important, yes, it's the weather, the sun, the heat from the sun, and of course the soil. It's really, really different, yes.
I would say definitely that Chablis and American Chardonnay traditionally would definitely be two opposite ends of the Chardonnay spectrum, definitely. So, Pierre, we're gonna have to move you on, if that's all right, mate. We're gonna move on to the Pinot Noir. Where I've just seen we're almost half an hour in here, so we've still got more to get through. So we're gonna move on to the Pinot now, ladies and gents. So it's in the same area in Sonoma Coast still. Oh, and just to put a full stop on your what you were saying before, Pierre, the Russians, after which Russian River Valley was named after, they were hunting beavers. They're after beaver pelts. That was
so the Pinot, it's very similar. So La Crema, and something I'd like to mention, I didn't say, but La Crema is not trying to make Burgundian wine in California, because as the comparison you said about the Chablis, it's a great. Even as being French, I always try to compare what I know, which is France, and now I start to know a little bit about California. But the thing is, La Crema makes wine from Sonoma, even if it's Pinot and Chardonnay. They don't try to copy what Burgundy does. Sorry. So it's really, really different. And for the Pinot Noir, I think it's the same, coming from the really cool area, cool climate of California region. And what they do is this 70% of whole berry maceration. It's something to retain freshness, to retain acidity in the wine, purity. So if you're tasting the wine at the moment, I'm sure you find some really juicy, some cherry, bumbleberry, some raspberry kind of component. Also, sometimes some canned strawberry and things like that. And this really coming from the vinification. But again, the Pinot is coming from this vineyard, which are between 25 to 50 years old. So again, La Crema is choosing different things. Winemaker is choosing vineyard from across the coast, from different vineyards. So it's not a single block. La Crema does single block, but today we're testing this because we really try to express the Sonoma coast. So what will be Sonoma coast in one wine? It's like when you taste one from Burgundy and the appellation is Bourgogne, generic. So it's a blend of different area. And so this, it's a wine which is really juicy, really fruity. The oak treatment, again, it's really delicate. And this is something that I think is worth to mention. Jackson family, so Jess Jackson, in the 1992, decided to invest in a stave mill in France. So the stave mill is the place. So if you have a barrel is like that, and it's made by with pieces of wood, long pieces of wood stacked together to make the barrel. This is called a stave. The stave mill is the place where you fabricate this stave, this piece of wood. And in France, Jackson is the only non-French family to own a stave mill at 51%. So we're in partnership with a French company. And this is something really important. So when the wine, the oak, is coming from France, it comes from our own stave mill. And we do it in our own same cupper. So the barrel maker, we own it as well. And this is something, one of the power of Jackson. Jess Jackson, he was, I think he was a freak in terms of micromanagement, but in a good way. Wanted to control everything, just to end up with a high quality. So if you own the oak, you own the vineyard, you own the winery, you own the winemaker, you own the harvest people, and I mean, you just make the quality that you want, because it's all about quality. And I think La Crema is a perfect example, because we have our own vineyard by the coast of Pinot, the barrel owned by us, and all that to end up in a glass, and to have a perfect balance between the fruit, the oak, the length of the wine. And I think this La Crema, it's really showing this kind of balance, what you're looking in wine. It's pleasure, it's fruit, spices, and it's really long. Yeah.
Pierre, we've got a fantastic comment from Danny, really singing the Pinot's praises. Not as fruity as, say, you know, Tasmania or New Zealand, but getting some nice kind of cherry and savoury characteristics from it. Yeah. I'm really keen to throw to Mark and Ali, obviously, with their, you know, encyclopedic knowledge of Pinot Noir. Guys, how does this compare to you know, other regions and other countries' interpretations?
I would say one thing that I would definitely add in immediately is when I was learning about the wines of this region, one thing that someone said to me, a very senior member of the wine trade, said to me that has really stuck with me, is that if you're blind tasting a Pinot Noir and you know it's a Pinot Noir, if you can't decide that it's from the New World or the Old World, it's a Sonoma Valley Pinot Noir. Because it really does have a mix of New World fruit with Old World earthiness, and they're very modern, polished wines, absolutely. And they've got lots of lovely bright fruits, but there's always a little bit of that savory, smoky characteristics in them. And so it really has one foot in both worlds. And Ali, I'd be keen to hear your feedback on that.
Yeah, is the drilling too, can you hear it in the background? Is it too loud or is it okay?
No, perfect. Okay,
cool. Yeah, well, firstly, I've got to say, this is the kind of Pinot I really love to drink. And I think that is the key thing with these wines. I wouldn't say it's the world's most complex Pinot. And I think you'd agree with that, Pierre. Yeah. But it's incredibly juicy, drinkable and moreish. And for the price, it's certainly the kind of wine I want to be drinking on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, even a Friday night. But I think, stylistically, I'd agree with you, Mark. I think there's a sweetness of fruit that you won't find in Burgundy, but there is always a savory character, perhaps not as much as maybe Oregon might have. I would say that might be even a little bit more Burgundian in style. But, we could, compare this to, it's certainly not a Targo, which has that glycerol rich character. It's very different to Australian Pinots in many ways. I just love the brightness of fruit, and it's fun. And too often for me, Burgundy isn't much fun at this price point. And, obviously, Pinot, Burgundy, when it's great, can be ethereal. But, and I think that now it's amazing all over the world how many countries now, but specifically California, are producing these juicy, vibrant, delicious wines. And it's been a long time coming, but it's great to see over the last 15, 20 years that this is happening. So, yeah, I think you're right. Certainly a hark back to Burgundy, but it has its own juicy profile of California and of Sonoma.
Fantastic. I'm seeing a lot of empty glasses in the gallery view, so I think that's a great timing to move on to the Cabernet.
So definitely, thank you, Luke. So moving to one of the most famous wine styles of California as a state, but also as a region, as a producer, California Cabernet. So this is the Stone Street Cabernet. I'll get you guys to pour into your glasses if it's not already done. So this is a fantastic 3D view we've got here of the winery. So Pierre, over to you, mate, onto the Stone Street.
Yeah, so now Stone Street is really, it's as you say, it's one of the greatest. It's not from Napa, it's from Sonoma again. And this is really, so just to make a kind of big statement, Stone Street was the middle name of Jess Jackson. So Jess Stone Street Jackson. So he created this winery purchased some of the vineyard in '95, so it's not too young for in terms of Californian standard. But so the winery, it's really became actually one of the icon of Sonoma in terms of Cabernet, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc. So they don't do any Pinot because it is on the east part of the Sonoma, as I was showing to you earlier. And as you see, the winery is not so big; it's just a little house. And here, this map is unbelievable. So as you can see, so the winery will be just there on a flat, and then so the north of the map, it's on a right, and so what Jess Jackson did in 1995, it's pretty funny, if I can say. He purchased the whole mountain.
Just the whole mountain.
Yeah. It's called. Yeah, it's. Why not? Huh? If you can.
Yeah, well, if you can afford it, why not?
No, but it's he was a property. Huh? So he was a mountain which is around it's 2 kilometers long on 1 kilometer wide, and it goes up to 800 meters of elevation. So this is also, you can see the forest at the back as well. So that's all owned by the Jackson, because this property, mountain property, was on an auction, and somebody, it was two people to bid on it. So Jess Jackson and another gentleman, which I can't really say the name, and the gentleman wanted to do real estate development. So putting houses and almost like a Disneyland of wine and blah, 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 all the very American dream. So Jess bid on it, and he was able to buy it to keep it as natural as possible, as wild as possible. And something which is really, really important. So now on this property, which is around, in terms of size, it's around 6,000 hectares. No, sorry, not 6,000, 2,000 hectares, but you have 250 hectares of vineyard. And it doesn't all go into Stone Street, just to mention. So some of them go into a different winery. We sell some wine to some fruit that we don't think is good enough for us. We sell it to other people. But what's really important is for you to see the contrast between the forest, and I don't know if you can see the way that the hills go down. Here, when you have the Stone Street vineyards on the right, you have all these vineyards planted. So they were planted before, they developed some more winery. And if you can zoom back a little bit, it's really like, here on if you go southeast of the blue point, like 3 centimeters southeast of the blue point, you have this kind of small vineyard, and that's what the winemaker. So the winemaker is a lady, and she's in charge for the last 4 or 5 years. And really, what she tried to do is to express this mountain, because here, so you have the 2 blue points. So the winery, which is on a flat, and the vineyard, which is in a mountain elevation. And we'll speak about mountain for the next one as well, for the ZINFANDEL. And you can see here the different elevation, and this is one of the main points of California overall. Napa, Mendocino, Sonoma, Monterey. You have the flat vineyard and the mountain vineyard. So the flat vineyard will give wine which are juicy, ripe, round, not much tannin. You know the tannin, the dry characters, the astringents. And then when you go up in a vineyard, you get more power, concentration, you get length in a wine, and that's what Stone Street is about. So this Cabernet, which is blended with a little bit of Merlot, with some put some Cabernet Franc, some Malbec. Sometimes it really depends. They try to express the mountain vineyard of Sonoma. So it is a cooler climate area, but it's a blend of. This is probably 45 different vineyards blended together. So if you think the winemaker, she's got this batch of all the vineyards. So if you can zoom in a little bit, so we can get to see the vineyard.
I was just going to jump in for a sec here, Pierre.
Yeah.
The first thing that jumps out at me when I see this picture, and this is this image. Well done, Luke. This is just such an incredible image of it. Often I will hear in famous writings about some of the most well-respected vineyards in the world, what immediately jumps to mind is Côte-Rôtie and Condrieu in the northern Rhone. You hear of the word an amphitheatre vineyard. Now, if that's not an amphitheatre vineyard right there, I don't know what is. If you want to get a visual representation, that is just absolutely incredible. All the different aspects facing the sun at different times, getting different complex ripenesses, and that's incredible.
No, but thank you for saying that, because if I say that, I will be pretentious. as a friend.
I'm glad we organized that one before, mate. That's good.
No, but so the reason of the amphitheater shape is just for the vineyard, for the grape to be planted and to get as much sun as possible from east to west, from west to east. Sorry, all day. And so that's one of the lucks that we have at Jackson is we can plant vineyard. And when we purchased it, most of the vineyard were like that, but we just continue to do it, and we continue to experiment, to try to get the best of the vineyard with exposition, grape variety. So why do we put Merlot with a little bit more clay? Why do we put Cabernet Sauvignon with more limestone, Cabernet Franc with more volcanic soil? And this is all about experiment. And this is one of the beauty of California, of Sonoma and Napa to a certain extent, is that we are able to still experiment. It's a new world. It's but if some of you have seen Niangara a few days ago, it's the same. It's just about experimenting, learning, and improving quality. So this is what we are really trying to do with this wine.
Yeah. Amazing.
Absolutely.
We've had a lot of questions and comments come through, so we're going to try and get through them as quickly as possible so we can taste the fourth and final wine. Really insightful, actually, from Michael. He said, like Australia, California suffered from pretty severe fires.
Yes.
Were the wineries affected along the south coast? How did it play out?
So if you can put back the map, I can be very precise about it, because the fires, they were terrible. In Sonoma, in town, in city, we as a Jackson, can you go back a little bit, a bit further? As a Jackson, you had 27 people lost their home, employees, so people working in vineyard, people working winery, but the house just went burned, because in California, the house are built with wood because of the earthquakes. So if you have a fire, your house just burned down, and 2 hours later you have nothing. Yeah? So it was terrible. We were not lucky for people, but lucky enough, the owner Barbara, she helped people a lot, and so a lot of city when burned down. For the vineyard, we had some luck. Because now you can see here, so you have STONESTREET, the two blue points on the map, and then you have one ridge and then another ridge just after. So let's say 3 centimeters on the east, on the right of the point. So Robert Louis Stevenson Park, and then so the fires, they were, let's say if you take that around the blue point, that was the fire were, and then the vineyard, the wind comes from the ocean, so all the smoke were pushed out of our vineyard.
They're pushed away from the vineyards.
Pushed away, pushed away. So because in terms of fire, you have a problem with the fire itself, and then with the ash, and then with the smoke. So it's 3 big problems. And then you have a problem also that are you able to reach to your winery, because winery are pretty isolated. Because the road are closed and everything. So we lost, let's say the vineyard, they don't burn, because vineyard is green, is irrigated, and it doesn't burn. So vineyard, it does like a cut fire. But some of our wine, yes, some of the wineries, they had smoke, some ash, and there's some ash on the grapes. So when the ash is on a grape just before harvest, you cannot harvest it. I mean, because if you take the grape with ash, you ferment it, you macerate it, ferment it and everything, the wine will taste like smoke. So we got rid of a lot of grape. So yes, we lost some fruit. We lost some wine, some wineries that didn't produce any wine, but thanks for being a Jackson family part as a group, we will handle. But yeah, it was really complicated. We struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that. I believe we've got a couple of questions come in from Facebook. Jane, you wanted a couple of questions directed to Ali and Mark, if that was right?
Yeah, thanks, Luke. I've got two questions that have just come in. The first one from Anne-Marie. This is probably just a quick one that Mark can answer, and then I might pose the next one to Ali, if that's all right. But the first one was actually relating back to the La Crema, but is it difficult to market Sara Lee vineyard wines to Australians because of the well-known dessert brand?
Yes and no. Look, let's be honest. American wines are never going to be hugely popular in this market here. I find I'm sure you guys are seeing as well, there is a bit of overlap in the taste profile and, you know, the fruit flavors and everything. So there's a bit of competition in our local market, definitely. The other issue, of course, is the price and the taxation when things come across. We're obviously encouraged to drink our own products, and taxes have definitely been put in place to kind of to make sure that keeps happening, so to speak. However, there is definitely a good foothold for USA wines. I think as the Australian palate matures and we get to know more about where things came from and different styles of wine, we're definitely starting to expand what we're looking for. And I mean, 5 years ago, you wouldn't be able to find a Willamette Valley Pinot anywhere in Australia. 10 years ago, people wouldn't even know where Willamette Valley even was. So, and now you can find a few importers bringing some in. So it's definitely starting to grow, but it's from a very, very small base. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks, Mark. The second one, I'll just ask Ali about this one. How do you feel that the Stone Street Cabernet compares to like your quintessential Napa Valley Cabernet?
Great question.
I might be the wrong person to ask because I've got all of the wines except this one. So I've got.
I'll put you on the spot.
I haven't got this wine in front of me, so I might need to pass on to the other guys. But I have tasted quite a few similar wines. I would say that this would be maybe. I might be completely wrong here, but I would imagine it to be slightly less ripe, I suppose, would be the obvious thing, and a little bit more restrained, probably perhaps firmer tannins and a little bit more the edginess to it, I suppose, would be that. I might be completely wrong, but I would expect Napa is, as Pierre was saying, considerably warmer. If anyone's been to San Francisco, I was amazed when I went to Napa and was in San Francisco and it was maybe 21, 22 degrees. And then you go into Napa and it can be 32, 33 degrees. You know, the same day, 10 to 11, even more within, and it's only, 30, 40 miles maybe, you know.
And it's also, I think, what a lot of people don't really realize when you're talking about the Napa especially, is it's basically it's like a bowl. The whole thing's like a bowl. You've got two mountains on either side, and then in the center, this flat section. And it really, all of those mountains kind of reflect the heat down onto the flat land there. And it is very, very hot and dry. And a lot of people say it's the baking heat, and you really, really do feel that in the Napa. Whereas you cross the mountain and you're on these undulating hills that are closer to the cooling ocean. And of course, you've got the incredibly cold Humboldt Current, which comes from the Pacific Northwest and comes down across the coast, all the way down to South America, actually. And that Humboldt Current is the reason for the fog in San Francisco when the cool water meets the warm water in San Francisco Bay. But that cold water creates a cold breeze for Sonoma that on occasion will make it into Napa, but more often than not doesn't. So
that's very true. That's very true. It's the same, exactly the same as you say in South America and Chile. You know, if anyone goes swimming in the sea near San Francisco or in Chile, there's a reason why people can't take from Alcatraz because the water is, beside the sharks, it is so incredibly cold in that water around Alcatraz. You look at Alcatraz near San Fran, you think I could swim that. That's like so easy. Yeah, I wouldn't want to try it.
Yeah,
so it's very, very cool.
Yeah, no, it's and this is exactly why there is mountain between Napa and Sonoma is famous for Pinot and Chardonnay. And where this one is growing is because it's on this mountain on elevation, and then you go on the other side is Napa, and you have Cabernet all the way down because, yeah, as you say, it's a ball of heat. Sonoma, it's a wind coming from the ocean, so that's the difference. And then into the glass, it brings to freshness, acidity, tension. So this wine we drink it now is 2016 Cabernet, but I mean we can easily wait for 15 years for this wine. It will be even better. Yeah,
I completely agree. So we've got 10 minutes to go now, so we're going to jump onto our final wine for the evening tonight, and just a few quick. So obviously there's plenty of information here for you guys to look at and read about if you want, but first things first, I think someone has already answered this question potentially, but who knows? So first of all, who's had a Zinfandel before is the question. Hands up. Very good. And now who can answer what the true name of Zinfandel is? Because it has another name.
We've got Marianne definitely holding up some hands.
Yeah, I remember.
The true name or the one that most people will know?
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. Good point, Alistair.
Very true.
And you can see the MW, yeah.
So many answers coming in here. So absolutely bang on, William. Primitivo is the other one. So, Primitivo is one of the most famous Primitivo di Salento in the very south. It's the very, very southern section of the boot of Italy. And of course, there were a huge number of Italian migrants that came to California, especially during the gold rush era. And Primitivo was known for, one of the reasons why it was brought across is not only because it makes a good wine, but because the bunches, it makes these enormous bunches. It can be quite a hardy and productive grape variety. And it's actually excellent as a table grape as well. It's not just for making wine. You could also serve it as a food as well, so it's quite a flexible, variable wine. So that's why it was brought across. And I'm going to throw back to Luke now, who's going to show it. He's going to take us to the town of Zinfandel, show you where that is, and then of course that's where the vineyards for EDMEADES.
So I hope everyone can see my screen again. Obviously, we're starting on Stone Street, but I'll just move us along upwards north a little bit there.
So this is the town of Zinfandel, obviously.
Look at that. Incredible.
Okay, so now back over to you, Pierre.
EDMEADES is it's a winery which was purchased. So this one was not created by Jackson. It was purchased in 1988, but the first vineyards were planted there in the early 60s by Dr. EDMEADES, which was a doctor at the time, and he was just having pleasure to plant vineyard. And it is coming from an area called Mendocino or Mendocino. In the north of, so if you have Sonoma and Napa, it's on the north. And I really like this map because, okay, so the north is on the right now, but you have the valley floor and all the part of the left, and you can see it's all forest. And the real vineyard of Mendocinos are coming from the forest. So for the EDMEADES, for the Zinfandels that we are drinking, the vineyard are above 600 meters up to 900 meters of elevation. So it's really small batches, small vineyard that the winery is trying to do, and really, really small production. So now we get to something really different. Because Zinfandel, we all know Zinfandel, yes, it's Primitivo at first, it's from Europe, but Zinfandel can be white, can be rosé, can be sparkling rosé, can be sweet, but the great Zinfandel make great wine. And this one, so it was planted around 45 years ago. And there is a little bit of Syrah in a blend and Petite Syrah. So Petite Syrah is a cousin, if I can say, of the Syrah. So as petite, so means smaller. So it's a berry is very, really small and will give a lot of acidity to the wine and the tannin structure. So that's something really, really important because the vineyard, they are really high in elevation on a cooler climate. They are on a very long growing season. So for the winemaker, it's really complicated to not to get any rot or to get any disease. So they really need to handle the vineyard precisely. And MEADES is it's made as organic winemaking. We don't really promote it on a label or anywhere because it's not the way to do. The winemaker is doing it because it's like that, but he doesn't want to sell the wine because it's organic or natural. But it's really something that if you taste it, the wine, as you can see, the color, I'm sure it's pretty clear. You can see through the wine, but it's really, really powerful on the nose. You have this sweet cherry flavor. You have this soft fruit, blueberries. But when you drink it, it's all on a mid palate. You have this mouthfeel, and it's really elegant on the back. And for me, this is in terms of value for money in California. And Zinfandel is something you cannot beat. And it's a real expression of one appellation that nobody really know, Mendocino, and Zinfandel. But this bottle is really something I think out of the normal thing, and I really hope you can enjoy it. And I would like to have your feedback on this one because we taste some Pinot, Chardonnay, and Cabernet. But I'm always interested about what you think about this Zinfandel.
If I could just jump in 1 second. So for those of you who have never seen the words on this screen there, Petite Syrah, that's another one that has another name, one that you may or may not know, the one that we grow in Australia that some producers are quite popular for. It's called Durif. So Petite Syrah is also Durif. So you may have had a Petite Syrah yourself already. So
yeah. It's the winemaker likes to blend because it's planted there. And Mendocino, it's an area where a lot of people from France making champagne, sparkling wine, they went because it's so cool. It's a cold area. There is not much Cabernet or Merlot growing in Mendocino. It's too cold. And Zinfandel is one of these grape varieties we can really handle the cold. And again, the growing season is much longer, and it's really hard to make a good Zinfandel. And I think MEADES is it's something really, really particular. But yeah, it's.
I definitely agree, and I would say that Zinfandel quite often, and I mean quite rightly so, in certain experiences of my own. A lot of Zinfandel, probably more than 90% of Zinfandel that's produced is in the Central Valley, in the southern, the central section of California, and it's just bog standard, row upon row of just big alcoholic, kind of 16%, rich, round, flabby, dry red.
This is almost 16%, so be careful. But you don't feel it. That's the thing.
That's exactly right.
I'm going to jump in there because that's exactly the point that I was tasting this wine. You know, it's 15.5, 16%.
Yes.
Yet it really, truly carries it exceptionally well. You know, I'm quite sensitive to wines that have, dare I say, excessive alcohol. But I really wouldn't say that this has excessive alcohol. It just carries it extremely well. And I know one of the issues with Zinfandel is, I think someone said earlier, or maybe it was you, Mark, that they have these big bunches, or maybe it was you, and they do tend to ripen at this is one of the winemaker's big issues. Within each bunch of grapes, you will have grapes that are, you know, almost raisined and other grapes that aren't ripe. So it's very difficult actually to really, if you made a Zinfandel like this, I imagine at 13.5%, half of the bunch would be, maybe not even half the bunch, would be completely, you know, unripe. So it generally has to be at that higher alcohol to allow some sort of semblance of semi-even ripening, if that makes sense. And I think I agree. I've had ups and downs with Zinfandel in the past, and I recently begin to enjoy wines with a little bit more generosity. And it's funny how your palate changes. And I
It's
agree.
aged,
I think this is tasting really, really beautiful.
So
Yeah,
with, everyone, we're getting towards 7:30 now. We're on the cusp here. So I'm just reminding everyone here that you win your wine of the night. Someone here this evening will win their favorite wine. Now, we've all tried all of the wines. Some people have already picked their favorites long ago, but others, I hope you've waited till the end. Please do text in your name and the wine, and you will win a bottle of that wine. So that is on to, I'm going to hand over to, if everyone's got their things in, hopefully, Luke, have we got a few names on the board there?
We've got a fair few names. I've just done a last refresh and copied and pasted the names in. So thanks for that, everybody. I'm just going to start sharing my screen now, and we can spin it. So good luck to everybody. Okay.
Here we go.
Here we go. I hope everybody can see that. And again, good luck.
I cannot win me.
Am I allowed to join this next time?
Yeah, me too.
Liz, congratulations. Fantastic. I'll be in touch and we can sort out your wine.
Bravo.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you. Okay, so that pretty much wraps us up for tonight. Thank you for your patience, everyone. I know it's been a busy one, most definitely, and there's a lot of there was a lot of wines to get through, and lots of different grape varieties from different areas and different styles and histories and everything. So a lot to take in, obviously. Of course, if you wanted to watch any of this back, we've been recording everything, so we'll have that up online tomorrow on our website. So if there's anything you want to revisit, all of our previous tastings are all available online as well, attached to the packs. If you want to buy and refresh anything, refresh your palate on any of them. If you want to rewatch, absolutely go for it. We've got a few more events coming up. So we've got a Rhone Valley event coming up next week. Unfortunately, the in-person tasting has completely sold out. We have to be very, very strict with the number of people we can have in our tastings, of course. However, the online tasting pack is still available. That's a 6-pack of wines. So it's a lot of wines, obviously. However, if you are interested, please do jump online or speak to Luke or speak to Jane, whoever is going to be in contact, and we can get you the wines, absolutely. And you can join us from your own place while we're in the tasting room. Week after, Steve Pannell, one of my absolute favorite winemakers in the world, is going to be joining us. He's an absolute gun. We've got we're focusing on one of my favorite grape varieties, Grenache. So that's going to be excellent. And then after that, we've got Giuseppe Vajra coming from Italy to taste some Barolo. So that's gonna see us off for this evening. Thank you everyone for attending. I hope you had a great time. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found some new wines that you had never tried before, and maybe gave some wines a chance that you might otherwise have passed over. So thank you everyone for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you online again sometime soon.